Hello everyone. So in this video, we are going to talk about the cloud compliances. So we'll understand what exactly is the cloud compliances, what is the need of the cloud compliances, the challenges, and how the cloud compliances can be incorporated using AI tools, and then the future scope and the uh, future trend that we can see in uh, incorporating the compliances onto the cloud. So let's start. So compliances in general refers to adhering to certain laws, regulations, and industry standards. We have compliance strategies. Basically, these are the plans and action taken to ensure that an organization AI and cloud operations meet these requirements. We have witnessed that the worlds are becoming it's keep on growing, and that growing means world is becoming increasing digital. The importance of cloud security and the compliances will only grow as the time passes by because we are more becoming digital and moving onto the cloud. And looking into this, the organization must prepare for this evolving threat and must build regulatory environment of the future. So, what is the compliance basically means? Now, if we say that the cloud, all the organization must have to undergo with the compliances. So, maintaining the compliancing is basically ensuring the integrity, the confidentiality, and availability of any sensitive data that that we are storing onto the cloud. If you are not, if you- as an organization, if you are not compliant, then you may have to face some significant legal challenges or some financial consequences may be applicable for non-compliances. Though maintaining the compliances is something that is unique to the cloud, but it can be more complex in the cloud environment because we have aspects such as the location of data, and in the cloud environment, we have seen that it is very much easier to distribute the data from um means you can distribute the data across many other locations. Uh, in the cloud environment, the data is to be stored at a remote locations, and data can be moved easily from one location to other when you are using cloud services. And this is basically creating an issue because the location that is keeping data are actually in on some regions. There are some regions. They are on some location and on this globe, and these locations I have having may have certain policies of data usage. So it need to be sure that wherever the data is being stored, it must be compliant of the region which is applicable there. We have certain regulatory framework. Uh, So regulatory framework is basically a set of rules. It's a kind of guiding principle for a specific area. It is designed to keep things organized uh, in a safe way, and the things can be handled in a fair way. So we have rules. So regulatory frameworks are basically there are certain rules. These are the laws. These gives the guidelines. They give the standards that everyone playing in the business has to follow. There are certain regulatory agencies that make sure that everyone follow the rules, and also they can penalize those who do not follow these rules, or those who don't maintain these compliances. So we have our regulatory frameworks, and the objective or the aim of this framework is to frame certain rules and to make sure that things are to be dealt in the fair way. They want to keep the people safe. Uh, the objective is to avoid any bad happenings that can happen to the business, and ultimately they want to make sure that everything runs smoothly. There are certain regulatory frameworks which are applicable on different areas, or you can say to different businesses, like a GDPR, which is a very popular regulatory framework which stands for General Data Protection Regulation, which basically defines the data security and privacy requirements for the data which is stored within an organization. It was originally defined by the European Union but has been adapted in many regions around the world. Then we have HIPAA is there. It's again another regulatory framework is there, which basically stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It basically is a set of specific requirement regarding the protection of personal health information. Then we have PCI DSS. It's a stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, and basically it ensures that payment card data is securely stored. So whenever we are making online payment using our card, then actually we have to make sure that the service that we are using is actually compliant with the PCI DSS. Then we have a FedRAMP is again another framework which stands for Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. Uh, this basically standardizes the approach to security assessment and also authorizing the access of cloud services. But this is only applicable to the United States agency. Similarly, we have uh, one very popular that's called CCPA, that stands for California Consumer Privacy Act. It is likewise applicable only in California, but again, any organization can still claim to be CCPA compliant if they feel that it is going to help their business, because this framework is actually providing a transparency of and usage of data, data usage, or you can say the sharing of data, and how that personal data to be handled. It's being defined by this CCPA. So it is basically designed for the California, but many other countries are also going to uh, comply with this kind of framework. And there are other also popular regulatory frameworks are there, like ISO 27001. This is for general information security. And then we have NIST, that is from the National Institute of Standard and Technology, and also have a variety of specifications. And generally, these specifications are applicable to government and contractors. Now, in order to understand the compliances applicable to the cloud, we need to understand the cloud model, the cloud structure. So the cloud model is basically based on the shared responsibility. So shared responsibility means we have two players are there. We have a provider, the cloud providers, and the cloud user, the customer, and both are having some responsibility, because both together can actually involve to get their business running. So the responsibilities have been defined and been distributed between both these two players. So in the shared responsibility, where the provider is responsible for their own infrastructure and the services they are providing, and the customer is responsible for whatever they are building on this infrastructure. I mean, whatever the application they are creating, they are deploying, they are provisioning on the infrastructure, they need to take care of it. That who is going to authorize these resources, and so what are the access policies, the authorization policies are to be taken care by the customer. So the division of compliance responsibilities need to be clearly defined as possible between the two parties through the service level agreements. It should cover all details such as who is responsible of the physical security of the cloud data centers and all the infrastructures within it. And both the parties must have a clear understanding to ensure that compliance is applicable across the business. This is very, very important because this becomes most of the time uh, a reason where the compliances responsibilities are poorly understood, and then they have to undergo penalties. So uh, but when we say the responsibility has been divided, but the division of responsibility will actually vary depending on type of service model has been used by the customer. So cloud services have been provided in different ways. There are IaaS, we have PaaS, we have SaaS is there. So, for example, if a customer is a IaaS customer, then customer has full control over the things like can configure the storage, the database, uh, the networking. But when we talk about SaaS, then there will be no access or authority to configure all these things. So, since responsibilities are shared, the provider must ensure this is very important for the provider, that he must ensure that they meet any applicable compliances requirement as well. But the responsibility typically ends at the infrastructure level. So from that point, the customer has to ensure the required compliances are met. So means the up to infrastructures using the devices, the infrastructures, uh, the sources which are kept there. So the usage of these sources, storing of these data onto the data center, the privacy issues, the confidential issues are to be maintained by the provider. But how these data can be accessed by the user is also to be taken care by the organization, by the customer who is actually using this infrastructure. Now, for example, uh, it would be up to the provider to ensure the services such as access control and permissions are available to be used to protect our data. So, uh, this is the responsibility of the provider mm, as responsible to provide the different provisions to the customer, that how they can safeguard the data, how can they can secure the data from unauthorized access. So there must be ample number of ways and provisions by which the customer can safeguard and secure the data. But then it is the customer responsibility to configure the access control properly, because if any breach can occur, then the customer cannot blame the provider, because provider is to provide the different provisions. So, as a cloud engineer, though the one who is actually handling or provisioning all the resources for a company onto the cloud must be knowledgeable and have a complete idea that what are the different provisions are available onto the cloud, so that it can be utilized in a proper way and safeguard the data. So it's very, very important for both the parties, especially for the customer to review this document, or means SLA, the contracts, agreement, and other documentation which are actually uh, applicable before they start working on this contract. Now, what is the importance of cloud compliances? So this is important. The very first important that comes in the mind is it basically develops the trust among the customer. So when we look to the higher level view, means we think in this aspect that it is a kind of law, it's a kind of regulation, and regulation of any type can sometimes be perceived as restrictions, or even it can be looked as an obstacle. But in most cases, they are actually beneficial to your operations, because if you are compliant, then it helps to develop trust among your customer. Now, for instance, if there is a bank which is non-compliant of the RBI guidelines, then none of us would put our money in the bank. So again, compliance is directly benefiting to our own operations. And the compliance is not the same and applicable in the same way to all the businesses. It is industry specific, such as for healthcare providers, we have HIPAA is there. For government sectors, we have different, as I said, we may have NIST, we may have a SOC2. For financial, we have a FINRA is there. So all these regulations have some stringent guidelines, the rules, and they define how the data must be stored, and these rules actually help to ensure that you are conducting businesses in a very controlled and in a consistent manner. Uh, but being compliant in the cloud requires a thorough understanding of the shared responsibility model. So, because you are into the cloud, and cloud, with, you have to be very sensitive about your data. So, you have to be compliance, not only with the general rules, but you have to be go beyond a normal. For example, if you are running your data center, you are running a business and you are just having your own data center, then the compliances may be of different nature. But if you are migrating and running your business onto the cloud, then the compliance nature will be of different type. Uh, so compliances must be applicable in all the cloud environment. Then we have a risk of cloud compliances because of the nature of the cloud structure. There is a risk involved. Uh, the reason being because we know that due to the increasing dominance of cloud services, or the physical devices used in business operations are growing, and which actually expand the attack surface and complicates the compliance efforts. So this is one challenge to be remain compliant in the cloud environment. There are different solutions have been proposed, like MDM solutions is one of the proposal to to mitigate these kind of risk. So we assume that each device that connects to the cloud service is a new risk by itself. So organization need to be implement robust mobile device management solution, or you can say MDM solutions, and enforce some strict security policies in order to maintain compliances across all devices accessing cloud resources. Then we have IoT compliances are there, and we have seen in the recent year the rapid growth of Internet of Things or IoT devices. This introduces a unique compliances challenges. These devices often collect and transmit the sensitive data, which further raising the concerns about your data privacy and security. So, ensuring the IoT devices comply with relevant regulations and must maintain visibility into the data processing activities. This is also very critical for overall cloud compliance. Then, if we look to the compliances, risk and consequences, uh, this also will tell that why we are sometimes non-compliant, means why the companies are sometimes non-compliant. So, if the company is non-compliant with the regulatory requirement, then it may uh, undergo severe financial penalties. And these penalties can be reaching up to millions of dollars depending on the severity of the violation and the applicable regulation. So it's very, very important to understand this very carefully. What are the compliances, and if these compliances are not met, then what are the consequences? So one of the reasons for non-compliance is the lack of expertise. It has been seen that many organizations they are struggling with the shortage of internal expertise in the cloud compliances because of the growing nature of the technology, and the evolving nature of both the cloud technologies and also evolving regulatory requirement, making it challenging to maintain up-to-date knowledge and skills uh, of these compliances. This is also one of the challenge where the companies fail to maintain this. Then the other reason may be poor understanding. Uh, there is a poor understanding of the applicable compliance standard that can also lead to significant risk. Organization has identified they might fail to implement necessary control, or they misinterpret the regulatory requirements and resulting in the non-compliances, and ultimately they will be falling into the penalty scenarios. So according to GDPR compliances, there are many cases are have uh, there are reported where the companies fail to be compliant and then they have to undergo penalties. So uh, the companies can only legally and under strict condition can gather customer personal data as per the GDPR, and they need to ensure that data must not be misused and responsible to protect it from exploitation. This is the guidelines from the GDPR. And if this is not maintained or met, then company have to face penalties. Now there are certain examples. For example, Google is fined uh, by the National Commission of Informatics in France, uh, 50 million euro, because it does not maintain user consent to process data for ad personalization. Then we have example of H&M. It's a German-based fine clothing company which was fined or penalized 35 million euro in 2020 for illegally monitoring and processing several hundred of employees' personal data without their consent. Then next is Telecom Italia. This is also one famous kind of case you can say, where they have charged about 27.8 million euro in 2020 by the Italian Data Protection Authority, uh, because they are doing excessive promotional call and unsolicited communication as part of the marketing strategy, which is not actually allowed as per the law. Then British Airways also fined somewhat $26 million in 2018 for not having sufficient measures to protect their customer information. So these are certain cases, big cases where these big companies, big players have undergone the penalties for the non-compliant for the business. So what are the challenges in maintaining compliances? Or you can say what are the need for maintaining compliances? So looking to the scalable and dynamic nature of the cloud, we know that this is evolving nature is visible in the cloud. So what is visible? We have observed, we have witnessed that a new customer can appear and disappear quite literally within minutes, and these changes could lead to the compliances gap in the cloud environment. This is one of the challenge. Then data sovereignty, and then data sovereignty concern can also arise because it is very easy to replicate data to other regions, which may have varying legal requirements. So it is important to know the actual physical location of a data because the data which we are storing on different regions may have their different uh, laws, they have different regulatory guidelines. So the company must ensure that if the data is placed at some region, then it must undergo with that policy. Then the other challenge is in the multi-tenant nature of the cloud that can also present the compliance challenges. Uh, Generally, this is typically more of a concern of the provider because the data of any number of tenant is all being stored on the same physical infrastructure. So the the key technology of cloud is on virtualization, where it supports multi-tenant kind of services, where the same uh, hardware, the same resource can be used by multiple user. So how the data is being separated and secured and confidentially kept by the provider if the same structure has been shared by multiple users. So this is one thing that need to be taken care. Now, for instance, that let's say the data for any tenant A need to be fully isolated and secured from tenant B, or you can say vice versa. Then cloud data center lacks the same level of visibility and control that actually was visible in an on-premise environment. Now, this makes it very difficult to maintain the compliances, particularly when it comes to aspects such as monitoring, logging, auditing. So, this type of transparency is actually not given in the cloud environment. Uh, Now, for example, you have no idea, you have no way of knowing if something, for example, let's say there's a hardware drive failure happens and it requires a technician to access your data to move it to another physical drive. Now, uh, there is an involvement of third parties. So third party integrations are commonly implemented by the cloud providers, and we would have no control over those integration. So we would need to ensure that any services that use those integration are also compliant with the solution we actually want to build. Then we have role of automation, means the compliances are something which is to be which is just to be implemented, must be monitored very carefully, regularly. And this is a very hectic job. So automation can also be used in order to ensure the compliances. So compliances may be assured, may be implemented using automation, but may result in any loopholes if something got overlooked. So we can implement automation for tasks such as configuration checks, updating and patching, access control management, for backups. Uh, so they are often necessary to help manage the cloud workload. So these are the different things where the automation can be done. But again, due to the inherent complexity of the dynamic and complexity, and we know cloud environment is very dynamic. So because of this dynamic nature of the cloud, automation can be difficult to implement consistently at a larger scale scenario. Means for for a smaller business, for a small organization, it can be done very easily, but it can become a complex job if you are going to implement for a large system. And if the automation is having something missing, and you have become quite reliant on those processes where the compliances are not fully implemented, then you might be blindly operating in a non-compliant manner. And whatever automation process you have implemented should be regularly viewed. So it is mandatory that if you are going for automation, you need to cross check, because something goes wrong, and if your processes are uh, running on if your business are running on the processes which are non-compliant, then you have to undergo problems. So it need to be reviewed regularly, uh, for the reason that they are not missing anything, or they can be manually checked by 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 manually or regularly to identify if there is any loopholes. Then we have certain compliance automation tools are there, that can simplify the process of monitoring your cloud environment, for any potential compliance issues in real time. Now, tools such as configuration management tool, for example, Terraform and Sybil, it can be used to create much more consistent environment through policies, which will help to reduce the chance of misconfiguration of or any human error that might result uh, in compliances, in case of any deviation of the compliances or any other issues. Now, these are the tools which will help you to monitor the compliances. Then we have security information and event management platforms are there that can be used to monitor for compliance related issues by collecting and analyzing the data and then generating reports out of the data, and can ensure any security related events. So the tools are there, but again, and the tools are to be used very carefully, very decisively, in order uh, to avoid any of the miscompliance. Now, what are the best practices to maintain compliances? There are certain best practice reports which will guide you to ensure that compliances are completely met. So the very first thing is the company need to undergo or select any appropriate framework that is aligning to the business, that aligns with whatever the regulatory requirements are there, such as NIST or SOC2, which stands for Service Organization and Control Version 2. This is a voluntary compliance standard that evaluates how a service organization manages customer data. There are different tools and services that must be utilized by the organization that enable to implement continuous monitoring and help to identify any compliance issues in real time. Then it is a good practice to use encryption. Uh, uh, the organization need to be sure to enable an encryption for data both at rest and at transit, wherever possible wherever as possible or applicable. Though big players or the big kind of major providers will encrypt your data automatically as soon as you upload it to the cloud. Then it's always good to do regular audits. So conduct regular audits and assessment to evaluate your environment to identify any gap that may have arisen in due period of time. Then it's a good practice to generate report based on the assessment, and they can present it to any stakeholders or auditors so that it can be demonstrated about your commitment to maintain compliances. And then other important thing which is assumed as the best practice, that staff must be regularly trained, organization must ensure that the staff is adequately trained in matters of compliances, and their associated best practices are to be well taught to the employees. And very, very important is the company must undergo the zero trust security model. So company must implement the zero trust security model and can enhance compliance effort by assuming no trust, and must verify that every access request is valid. Regardless from wherever it is generated, it has to verify it all every time. And then must adhere to the principle of least privilege. It ensures that users and the system have only minimum level of access uh, given to perform their jobs, to perform their functions. So these are the good practices that the company need to ensure. Then risk management. and continuous monitoring. This is also kind of mitigation technique and good practice that helps the organization to comply with the compliances. So the organization must adopt risk management policies that can be, or you can say, which are able to identify indexes and can mitigate risk as effectively as possible to reduces the chance of any failing of compliances. And then continuous monitoring is again suggestible. It should be implemented in order to stay on top of any changes of the compliances or the regulation. Also, monitoring will help us to identify any issues that may arise and can cause them to fall into non-compliances. Then there's a need to evaluate the cloud providers. So the organization need to evaluate the cloud providers based on the ability to provide compliance services. You need to thoroughly check that what are the certificate they have earned, what kind of compliances they are actually undergoing, and ultimately, uh, the ensuring that you are compliant requires a reasonable amount of time and effort. So this requires a thorough exercise, a good understanding of the compliances, the businesses, the services offering. Then only it can be justified and understood that the cloud provider is having all those compliances certification or not. As it is mentioned, the consequence of not being compliant can be substantial. So when it comes to compliances, it is always better to save and accordingly it need to be adopted. Then one can use the AI and can do automated reporting. So uh, cloud access security reports can be used uh, to enforce policies on data. Automated reporting compliances tools can help to demonstrate the compliances to any stakeholders or auditor. Now, coming to AI in cloud security. So we know that cloud computing is very much evolving and all the companies are moving to cloud. Cloud companies are growing very fast. It helps the businesses to grow, to store and manage the data easily. And because of its growing nature, it also involves security risk. Uh, Cyber attacks is one of the prime uh, risk that is visible. There's a case of data breaches. So traditional security measures are not sufficient in case of threats which are on the cloud. So here one can make use of artificial intelligence that can play a crucial role in protecting the cloud systems. So AI can help basically to detect unusual activities. They can predict attacks. They can also respond quickly if any threat has been realized. So in to summarize, AI can help in the anomaly detection, where AI can recognize unusual patterns such as unauthorized access if there is any. It can alert the security teams for whatever action to take in case of any uh, anomaly detection is identified. Automated threat management is also one of the thing where the AI can help. So AI system can take immediate actions to block any threat without any human involvement. We can just configure with the AI tools, and AI tools can take care of all such kind of threat. Then AI can also use for predictive analysis. AI can predict the potential attacks based on the past incident. It can also strengthen the security measures in advance. So what are the challenges which are there? So see, everything has two faces. It can give you some advantage and it also has some, drawbacks. So there are certain challenges if you are using AI. So one is the privacy concern because AI is basically is now more prominent because we have a lot of data is here. So in an AI system to work smartly, it needs a lot of data, and that basically may somehow concerns the data privacy issues. There may be a bias in the AI models. So these AI models or the tools are basically smart based on the learning on some set of data. So if there's a training on some biased data, then they may not work, accurately. Then complexity of AI system is also there. So there may be possibility that AI may have some decision based on the data, and it's sometimes very difficult to understand the interpretation of or to analyze the calculation of AI. So it is sometimes very difficult, or it's difficult to trust them fully, these systems. So what are the future trends and where we can overcome all these challenges? So yes, we have problem, we have solutions, and then the solutions can bring some new problems. So blockchain can be used uh, for data security, because this technology can prove the data protection and prevent unauthorized changes. Quantum computing can be realized in future, that advanced computing method may develop that may strengthen encryption and techniques, and can make more security of your data on the cloud. And then AI can become more powerful in detecting and supporting cyber threat instantly. So, for example, if we have all the advanced power of AI, and the financial company is actually using AI to protect its cloud data, so how it is going to benefit? So AI can just monitor, AI system can monitor all the network traffic, and can identify any hacking attempts. So as a result, the company can avoid many hacking events, and can have very few security breaches, and have a fast response time. So we have a advantage, we have disadvantage. So we have to be very carefully use all these things in order to make the best use of technology. So uh, definite so definitely there is a challenges, and then we have technology where the scope for handling these challenges. So to conclude, uh, uh, regulations are becoming more stringent and demanding. It is a need of the time because of the cloud nature, and so these laws need to be more stringent, more strict, uh, because of the developing cyber crimes. So these cyber security policies must be more stringent and demanding. There must be auditing procedures must be defined, and the transparency among these policies must be visible. So in the future, uh, the developments like AI, the blockchain, quantum computing will further improve the cloud security, and it will help us to make the entire technology more reliable and resilient against any attack. So that's all. Thank you very much. Hope you have understood what is compliance is, what is its use, and the challenges that we see, and how AI is going to help us. And again, what are the challenges in the AI, and how in the future these challenges can be handled. So this is all for this discussion. Thank you very much.